But so after the Lord of the Rings, him going into King Kong, I think that's a movie that gets forgotten quite frequently. Not that it's should be like remembered that much. It's hard to say. King Kong, in my opinion, and you can correct me on this or pose your conflicting opinions, but I think that King Kong is a lot better movie than it gets credit for. And I think it's more iconic than a lot of the movies coming out today. That movie, King Kong, the original concept for him doing it was, like I said, it came before he got the Lord of the Rings gig. And then he came back to it when the studio kind of saw that he got big and he had a lot more pull with his name, and they did it. Now, he wanted to do that because he was such a fan of the original. And you'll notice this is a through line through all of his works, is that he doesn't just try, he does not do a movie if he's not passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can point that to, he was offered Aquaman. It was, who was it that got it? It was James Wan that got Aquaman. But he was offered Aquaman like 3 times. Like the producer or studio was like texting him like, so do you like Aquaman? And he was like, but he turned it down because he said he just didn't have interest in Aquaman, and he only wanted to do projects that he was truly, really inspired and in love with. And King Kong is one where that was actually the case. He really loved the original, and the way that his King Kong was such a love letter to the original King Kong, I think is really beautiful.
Also, Skull Island was it was a heavy deviation from the classic King Kong story, whereas Peter Jackson's was different in some ways, but it was in some ways like almost slavishly.
Yeah, and I think it was because of the homage he wanted to pay to the original, which is why I think that obviously King Kong doesn't have the pool of the source material that Lord of the Rings did, and it's not as big, but I do think that we do him a injustice by kind of glazing over King Kong on his career, and some people even knocking it or not liking it. The visual effects were revolutionary at the time. They still, aside from that one scene that you always see get posted around with like the stampede of dinosaurs, the visual effects in the action sequences are truly great. I mean, the last like hour of the movie, I mean, you can say that it got slow, you can say this, but I mean, that's Peter Jackson. That's the love and care that he's putting into these movies. That's the way that the Lord of the Rings movies ended. They were very slow, drawn out, and dramatic endings. And I really appreciate that in King Kong. I thought that visually, the way that he captured King Kong on the tower and the planes flying by, and the whole essence of King Kong was so beautiful to me. I thought that what he did at making the natives of Skull Island, they were absolutely terrifying. I had nightmares as a child about those people. The sacrifice scenes, all the monsters, the prehistoric monsters that were on Skull Island. I thought that he really captured a lot of things that I think we all just take for granted.
Yeah.
In the movies, he captured. I mean, one of the main problems with all of his movies, and you could even say this with The Lord of the Rings, so I think it always just gets a pass with The Lord of the Rings because it's so beloved, is that he always tends to have a little bit of bloat to his movies. They're always a little bit bloated, and they always kind of wonder.
To me, that is the key issue with King Kong. Like, I don't dislike King Kong. Like, I don't think it's a bad movie. I just think it's okay. I think there's parts of it that are really great. Specifically, like the end where they kill King Kong is really visually striking, and parts of it really, like, I've only seen the movie maybe twice.
His relationship,
and the first time I was really young when I saw it.
When he's getting to know her and they're playing and he's kind of falling in love with her is really.
But there are
touching.
moments that stand out that have stuck with me. However, like, there's long stretches of that movie that feel like they're going nowhere, especially towards the beginning, and especially with how drawn out the ending is. But I guess it's also where it does deviate a little bit from the King Kong story, but it's also in the important areas. It's so close to how King Kong had been done before that it almost feels like, okay, so it's 3 hours long, and a lot of the main chunks of the movie are very similar to the past versions. And while like visually it's incredible at times, it feels very big, very bloated, and pretty hollow by the end of it. So it's like there are sections of the movie that I think work really well, but I think as a 3 hour whole, it's not. It just doesn't work to me.
I think that if there had already been a remake close to it in the way that Kong Skull Island has come after it, I think that would be a bit more viable of a criticism. But I think because it hadn't been done on that scale before, with new technology, with the way that cinema is these days, I think that it gets the pass on being true to the original and retreading it, because I feel like it really paid respect to the original. I don't feel like he was just like copy paste. I think that it was such a labor of love for him that I wouldn't say like it's like I just adore the movie or love it, because I'm not a massive King Kong fan, but I thought that it really accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. And I thought it was incredibly impressive and immersive. And I think that's what he does so well is world building, building these beautiful worlds and filling out the cultures and the characters, which I thought he did really well in that movie. And I say filling out the characters because he filled out the characters so well in Lord of the Rings, which he had a lot to pull from, but he really humanized those characters. You could attribute some of that to the actors as well. But, you know, a lot of those characters are iconic in Lord of the Rings books, but they're not exactly like they are on screen. They're not nearly as endearing. They're all way more in the books. They're a lot more aloof. It's very much more of a regal affair. In the books, and I thought what he did with the characters you could attribute to him, in my opinion, and what he was able to handle, and I think he carried that through to King Kong.